Flip video lesson 2.02, The French Revolution. This goes along with your Human Odyssey reading pages 369 to 383, and then your student guide pages 243 to 248. So please make sure you do have your student guide opened and ready to go. Lesson Introduction, The French Revolution. Soon after the American Revolution, another democratic revolution broke out. This time in France, the very country that helped the American colonists in their battle against Britain. Both revolutions were directed by people against a king. Both were inspired by the ideas of the Enlightenment. But the French Revolution would take a very different course from the Revolution in America. Learning objectives for this lesson. Many of these objectives are covered in detail in the readings from your Human Odyssey book, pages 369 to 383. So you need to, in this lesson, we're going to compare the Declaration of the Rights of Man with the Declaration of Independence. We're going to describe the events of the Reign of Terror, describe the reigns of absolute monarchs in France, describe the social structure of France and its influence on French life, explain how Napoleon came to power, explain the revolutionaries' criticisms of the church, identify major positions of the political spectrum, recognize reforms made by the National Convention, summarize Enlightenment ideas that promoted revolution in France, and summarize the circumstances and events that led to the French Revolution. So these are questions number 1 and number 2 in your student guide. Enlightenment ideas. Enlightenment ideas that promoted revolution in France. People have natural rights, government should represent the people, and rights should be written in a constitution. France's absolute monarchs had almost unlimited power. They were all powerful. Questions number 3, 4, and 5. The three estates. The three estates of French society. The first estate was clergymen. The second estate were the nobles. And the third estate were commoners. And if you take a look in this cartoon on page 371 in your book, the commoners are carrying the nobles and the clergy. The third estate supports the other two estates. Commoners are the only ones in society who do any real work. Nobles and clergy are lazy. It was very difficult for a commoner to change his estate by acquiring wealth. Number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So if you take a look at that while I'm reading over on the right-hand side, that hierarchy of estates and how the clergy is up at the top and then everyone else is down at the bottom and then the nobility are somewhere in the middle. Okay, so you can see where the minorities are making decisions for the majorities. So King Louis the 16th called a meeting of the Estates General in 1789 because he needed money. Prior to this meeting, it had been 175 years since the Estates General had met. One of the advantages of the first and second estates was that their members did not have to pay taxes. Unfair taxes angered members of the third estate. But if the third estate had tried to get the first and second estates to pay taxes, the first and second estates would have voted against the third. If the third estate were constantly outvoted 2-1 by the other two estates, the only way the commoners ever hoped to gain a fairer share of power was by ending the Estates General and its division of people into estates, by having people vote instead of having estates vote. Deputies of the Third Estate took the Tennis Court oath, swearing not to disband until they had drafted a new constitution. The new name the deputies gave themselves was the National Assembly. So I know there's a lot on this slide. So questions 6 through question 11. And again, as I always say, if you're watching this on your own, feel free to pause and fill in your study guide. If you're watching this during class time, you can always go to the Padlet to find these slides. You can also go into the OMS to find these slides. Numbers 12, 13, 14, and 15, National Assembly. After the formation of the National Assembly, the Paris mob decided to get in on the action by storming the Bastille. The angry mob hoped to find arms, ammunition, and prisoners. They did not find arms, which were guns, or ammunition, but they did find 7 prisoners. The new National Assembly did not want to immediately get rid of the monarchy completely, but they did want to face change, their complete hold over power. Numbers 15 and 16, Declaration of the Rights of Man. American revolutionaries drew up a Declaration of Independence. The French wrote something similar called the Declaration of the Rights of Man. The revolutionaries disliked the church because it was too wealthy, it was too powerful, and religion ran contrary to reason, meaning religion was not focused on God, rather on individuals. All right, so we're going to take a quick pause here and look at page 248 in your student guide. So go ahead and flip to that page, and then you're going to complete the page using this information. And again, if you need to pause this video when you're watching it on your own, you may definitely do that. So question number 1, 13 years before let me read that part in blue there. In August 1789, a month after the fall of the Bastille, the National Assembly issued a Declaration of the Rights of Man. Answer the following questions about this important document, which became one of the most defining documents of the French Revolution. So again, this is in comparison to our Declaration of Independence in America. This is what was happening in France. 13 years before the French, revolutionaries in America had penned a similar document known as the Declaration of Independence. The American document spoke of a creator who endowed rights. The Declaration of the Rights of Man similarly made reference to a supreme being. Like the American document, the French Declaration expressed many ideas from the Age of Enlightenment. Both drew on the idea of natural law from the English philosopher John Locke and French thinkers known as philosophes. The American document spoke of rights such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Name 3 rights recognized in the French document. They were liberty, prosperity, security, and resistance to oppression. So that's 4, but you can just choose 3 if you'd like, or you can write all 4. 13 years after writing the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. ratified its Constitution. The U.S. Constitution and French Declaration both saw the need for a separation of powers. Number 7. How might French involvement in the American Revolution have influenced the ideas contained in the Declaration of the Rights of Man? Frenchmen fighting on the side of the Americans had seen that royal power could be broken. They learned about the ideas that inspired the American Revolution. Lafayette returned to France with ideas about liberty. And question number 8. Both the American and French revolutions were challenges to the power of a king. Is it possible for people to enjoy the rights expressed in the American and French documents and still have a king? If not, why not? And if so, how? So, yes, through government models such as the constitutional monarchy, kings can still be in power. But just like Britain today with the constitutional monarchy, there's an elected official, which is the prime minister, and there's still the monarchy, the king, which is comes to power through family line. The Glorious Revolution in England, the writings of Locke about the exercise of power beyond rights, the divine right of kings, in particular, behavior of particular kings were also implemental in changing the way England was governed. So now we're going to go back to the questions. So go back to where you were in the beginning. Question number 17, the Reign of Terror. The Reign of Terror, it was the period during the French Revolution when thousands of citizens were executed because they had been labeled, and often wrongly, enemies of the revolution. Numbers 18, 19, and 20, the National Convention and... Among the reforms of the National Convention were free primary education for all boys and girls, equal inheritance for both sons and daughters, and the abolition of slavery in the French colonies. Abolition means to get rid of. The directors turned to Napoleon for help against their enemies because he had an army, and they thought they could control Napoleon. They were wrong. Napoleon took control of France by seizing power from the Directory. Soon, he wielded as much power as a dictator. Question number 21, and the thinking question, what if? What if moderates had maintained control of the revolution? How do you think it would have turned out? So would it have turned out where Napoleon would have been in complete control? It would have been almost like it was almost like a dictatorship. If moderates had maintained control of the revolution, do you think that would have changed things? So if reactionaries had seized control, what would they have done? If the moderates had maintained control, it would have turned into a constitutional monarchy. If the reactionaries had seized control, there would have been a return to the days of absolute monarchs. And again, constitutional monarchy, remember, is where there's an elected official, a prime minister, and then there's still the hereditary line of kings and queens, so they both kind of coexist and rule. Absolute monarchy is where there is no elected official. It's just the hereditary role of kings and queens. That's an absolute monarchy. People do not have a say at all. Was there anything Louis XVI could have done to stop the revolution, to maintain the monarchy, or even save his own head? Or by 1789, was there nothing the king could have done? So he could have lived more frugally, avoided calling the Estates General, sided with the Third Estate, embraced the Constitution, not tried to flee France, or there was nothing he could have done because of the demands for change by the Third Estate, the poverty of the people, the reactionary positions of the First and Second Estates. And please remember, as we're going through these lessons, there's so much more to learn in your readings. So please make sure that you are doing your required readings as well as these student guides. So take a look at pages 246 and 247 and then complete the chart on page 247 using this information. So over on the left-hand side, you're going to write, for example, spring 1789, and then I believe it's underneath that. Let me take a look. Yeah, or to the right of that, you're going to write the estate generals meet. So you can see here, you'll write the date. Let me move that over. It's kind of backwards. Write the date and then fill in the information. Okay? So again, you can pause this video when you are watching it by yourself, and you can fill in that information. So we come to the end of this flip video. Freedom in any case is only possible by constantly struggling for it. I hope you all have a great day. Thank you for joining me.